محمد يا أشرف خلق الله يا مبعوث فينا نورت المدينة جئت بالرسالة.
الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين. اللهم صل على سيدنا محمد نور الأنوار وسر الأسرار وسيد الأبرار وعلى آله وأصحابه ومشايخ دينه أجمعين. أما بعد. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. So I've already had about 4 or 5 people approach me and ask me, how long are you going to be? Now, either you don't like me or you're very tired. So inshallah, I will try to keep this as short as possible and also try to get the message across. So if you can just stay awake with me, inshallah, and we will both benefit. Now, this story that I'm going to tell you is very relevant to all of our spiritual journeys. Now, there's 2 aspects. One is the meeting of Sayyidina Abdul Aziz al-Dabbagh alayhi rahmah with Sayyidina Khidr alayhi salam, and the second aspect is the illumination or the spiritual opening of Sayyidina Abdul Aziz al-Dabbagh. So just like you people had a session this morning, and some people give their feedback about their spiritual experiences, also Sayyidina Abdul Aziz al-Dabbagh rahimahullah had spiritual experience, but at a very, very high level. So although some of you may have heard this story, every aspect of this story is relevant to you, okay, from the beginning to the end. And there are many lessons in here which would benefit you if you pay attention to what is being said, inshallah ta'ala. So yesterday, Dr. Idrisi from Morocco, he did a live stream, and he mentioned about some aspects of the biography of Sayyidina Abdul Aziz al-Dabbagh rahimahullah. And he touched upon the part where Sayyidina Arabi al-Fishtali alayhi rahmah, the grandfather of Sayyidina Abdul Aziz al-Dabbagh rahimahullah, left a amana, a trust for him. And the trust was, does anybody remember what the trust was that he left? A skull cap and some shoes, okay, or sandals. Now, the story starts when Sayyidina Abdul Aziz al-Dabbagh rahimahullah was around 14 years of age in Ramadan. And his mother, may Allah be pleased with her, remembered about the trust that my uncle, because he was her uncle, Ibn Arabi Fishtali rahimahullah, he was her uncle, and she remembered the trust. So she gave him the trust at the age of around 14. And he mentioned himself, he put the skull cap and the shoes, and he received inspiration, and he received a message from his grandfather Ibn al-Arabi al-Fishtali. And he goes, I understood what he meant in this message. And he said he understood that he was to go and find a person of Allah, a godly person, a saintly person. And he said he went on this search to find a pious person, a religious person, a godly person. So it looks like some people here as well, there are people sat amongst you who have been searching for many years for something like they are experiencing now. And this is why I said this story is relevant to you. If you actually, even if you just pay attention to your own story, you will see that your story is relevant to what we are mentioning now. So he, alayhi rahmah, he said that in order to find this friend of Allah, he said wherever he would hear that there is a certain sheikh in a certain place, or there is a man of Allah, he goes, I would go to that person and I would do bay'ah to him, I would accept him as my sheikh, and I would take his wird or his wazifa or zikr. And he goes, I would do this until I felt that I wasn't getting any opening, I was getting constriction in my heart. Then he said he would leave him and then go find another sheikh who someone mentioned, or such a sheikh is a man of Allah. So he goes, I'd go to him and I'd do the same thing. And he goes, I kept doing this, going to one sheikh and then leaving, and then going and leaving. And the mashayikhs, they mentioned that he travelled, because he was born in Fez, in Morocco, he travelled to the boundaries of India looking for this sheikh. Imagine, in them days they didn't have airplanes, they didn't have cars, or such forms of or modes of transport, but he was going looking for this sheikh, and looking, searching, he ended up so far, even close to the boundaries of India, and still he didn't find this sheikh. He didn't find what he was looking for, because he would get this constriction in his heart. And then he came back. He said, I came back to Morocco, came back to Fez, and he said, I spent 12 years. 12 years, he said, I spent looking for this sheikh, and I didn't find him. Imagine searching for 12 years, looking for something, and then coming back to the very place you started, and you hadn't achieved actually your goal. 12 years. And he mentioned when he came back, he was still confused because he didn't actually receive what he wanted. Now, for those people who've been to Morocco, who've been to Fez, you will know that there is a big shrine in the graveyard. There is a big shrine in the graveyard which you can see, which is bigger than all the others. Okay, so if you go to Bab Futuh, Bab meaning door. So in these old cities, they would have city walls. Okay, around the city walls, they would have certain doors, and certain doors they would call Bab, and they would lead to certain. This one is Bab Futuh, which is in front of the graveyard in Morocco. Now, he says that, and in this shrine there's a awliya Allah, a wali Salih. He's called Sidi Ali bin Hirzihim. Some people call Harazim. Okay, Sidi Ali bin Hirzihim. He's buried there. He's a 6th century scholar. And if, for those people who've been to Morocco, you will notice that on a Friday, if you go to the shrines on a Friday morning before the Jum'ah, they will do the Dalailul Khairat collectively. Okay, this is one of the customs in Morocco. They all sit together and in one voice they pray the Burda or they pray the Quran after Maghrib and things. So he said that even at this time, 300 years ago, he goes, they would do the Burda on a Thursday evening. Okay, he would do the Burda on a Thursday evening, and he goes, he would go every Thursday to the shrine of Ali bin al-Hirzim, and they would do the Burda. So he says, that one day, it's like a normal Thursday, he would go, they did the Burda, they prayed the Dalalul Khairat, they finished the Dalalul Khairat, and then he left the shrine. And he says, when he left the shrine, he saw a person who was sat under a tree just outside the shrine. And this tree was a tree, it's called a Sidr tree. And he said there was a tree, the Sidr tree, and under this tree there was a man, and he started to speak to him. He said he started talking to me about internal matters that only I knew about. he started to mention certain things that only I knew about, like clairvoyance, they call clairvoyance. And he said, I recognized that this man, he was a man of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So he said, I approached him and I said to him, give me a wird, give me a zikr that I may do. And he ignored me. And he carried on just talking about other things. He said, I asked again, and he ignored me again. And he was talking about other things. He goes, I asked again, and he ignored me again. He said, the whole night passed. Till Fajr, he could see that on the horizon the light was coming. And he goes, he still didn't answer my question. And he just kept talking about other things. And he said, I realized that he was checking to see how serious I was. Did I really want it or not? Did I really want this wird or this zikr or this litany? Did I want it or not? And he was testing me until the time came of almost Fajr. And he said, he finally answered my question. He said, I'm not going to give you a litany. He said, I'm not going to give you. So imagine he's been asking all night. Here, people's patience is only this small. If somebody has to ask you twice, you're getting into an argument. Your brother asked you twice. Why don't you answer me? So he is asking all night. And he said, I'm not going to give you this zikr. And then he put a condition. So this man under the tree, he said, I will only give you this wird if you make a promise to me. If you make a promise to me that you will not leave it. So he doesn't know what the zikr is. He hasn't been given anything. He's been asked to make a promise that I will give you something if you promise not to leave it. He said, I accept. He said, I accept the promise. I promise that if you give me something, I won't leave it. And he said, in his mind, he thought this will be a zikr just like a zikr that other sheikhs have been giving him. And then he said to him, he said, you have to do this zikr 7,000 times a day. 7,000 times a day. So he made a promise. He didn't know what the zikr was. And he just accepted because he wanted this. He wanted to fulfill the instruction of his grandfather. And he said, I will accept. And when he said 7,000 times a day that you do this zikr, now it's too late. He's already made the promise. If it was one time or 1,000,000 times, it's too late. Now he has to honor the promise that he's made. What was the zikr? The zikr is on the screen. Okay? The zikr that he was given, so it wasn't something that you'd pray like a few names of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala or a kalima, la ilaha illallah. No, this was something like a darood sharif that he was asked to pray. And it's on the screen. So I want to just do this, let's just do this together. So just for the blessing, inshallah. Okay? So if you repeat after me, Allahumma Ya Rabbi Bijahi Sayyidina Muhammadin Ibn Abdullah Sallallahu alayhi wa sallam Ijma' Bayni wa bayna Sayyidina Muhammad ibn Abdullah في الدنيا قبل الآخرة. What does it mean? So it says in English, Allahumma ya Rabbi, O my Lord, Bijahi Sayyidina Muhammad ibn Abdullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam, for the sake and for the rank of our Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam, Ijma' bayni wa bayna, bring me and my Master Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam, Sayyidina Muhammad ibn Abdullah, fi dunya qabla al-akhirah, in this world, bring us together in this world before the hereafter. This is the zikr. That he is making a dua, it's like a dua, that, oh Allah, bring me and my Master Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam together in this dunya before I die. Bring me together in this dunya before I die. How many times? 7,000 times, okay? So those people who are good at maths, can you work out quickly how many hours that would take? If you say, if it took you 10 seconds to do it once, if you were quick, how many hours? Any guesses? 6 hours? 7? 14, 16, yeah, okay. Around 19 to 20 hours it would take you to do this 7,000 times a day if you took you 10 seconds to do it once. Okay, which is quite reasonable. 10 seconds is about reasonable. So imagine, now he's been given, he's promised to do this. So 20 hours, 19 hours a day, he has promised to do this zikr. So what does he say? He mentions, he says the zikr at the beginning was very, very difficult. And it was hard for him to do because his body wasn't used to it. So he would start at the time after Isha, and he said the first time it took him until the next day after Isha and just to complete. And he would keep doing it. Every day he would keep doing it because he made a promise to this man, and at the moment he doesn't know who this man is. He's just a man he met under the tree outside the shrine. He doesn't know who it is yet. And he's taking this zikr and he's doing this zikr. And he says it started becoming easy for me as I got used to it, as my body became accustomed to it. It started becoming easy for me. He said then it became easy little by little. I started doing it, finished before at dawn, finished at noon time, then at Fajr time, until it became so easy that he would start after Isha and he would finish at Fajr. Okay. One of the things there was a man came out from the shrine, the custodian of the shrine of Sidi Ali bin Hirzihim. And I've just missed this bit, I'm just going to recall because this is important, this is something that comes after. So when he was with the man, when he got the zikr from this person who was sat under the tree, the custodian of the shrine, he came out, he was called Sayyidina Umar al-Hawari. And this man said to him, look after this person. So the man under the tree, he said, look after him. And he said, from today he is my Sayyid, he is my master, I will look after him. He said he kept doing this zikr for a while, and after about 4 years, he mentioned after about 4 years, Sidi Umar al-Hawari became ill. So the custodian of the shrine of Sidi Ali bin Hirzihim, he became ill, and he goes, I went to meet him, and he mentioned to me 2 things. He said he mentioned to me 2 things. He goes, the first thing he said to me is, do you know who this man was under the tree that day when you got this zikr? He said, I don't know who it was. He says, this was Sayyidina Khidr alayhi salam who came and he gave you a dhikr. So this is the same Khidr where the brother was mentioning in Fajr, and he met Hazrat Musa alayhi salam. So Hazrat Khidr is this person who drank from the water of life. Okay, so he's like an ever-living person, a very saintly person, and he comes and he's this character, this wali of Allah. He comes in many stories, and he meets many awliya of Allah. So he's very prominent in the world of tasawwuf, and also he is mentioned in the Quran, and he met Hazrat Musa alayhi salam. So he was the one who gave him the zikr. He goes, this is the first thing he mentioned to me, and I didn't know. He said this was Hazrat Khidr alayhi salam. He goes, the second thing he mentioned to me, he said, do you know who my sheikh is? And he said, no, you didn't tell me. He goes, my sheikh is your grandfather, Sayyidina Arabi al-Fishtali. He goes, my sheikh is your grandfather also. And he said he didn't tell me this. For the 4 years I was with him, he never mentioned anything about this. And now he was about to pass away, and he mentioned this to me. And then after he mentioned these two things, he passed away. And when he passed away, he said, I received his secrets. He goes, when he passed away, I received his secrets. And after illumination, he mentions also that I didn't receive all of them. So basically, his grandfather, Sayyidina Arabi al-Fishtali, he passed away when Sayyidina Abdul Aziz Dabbagh Rahimahullah was very young. So the secrets of his grandfather were transferred to him through one of his disciples. He received the secrets of his grandfather through one of his grandfather's disciples. And he said, this thing happened, I received, and Allah give me more secrets. Now one of the things with secrets is you have to be in a position to keep them, because these types of secrets are not there to be told. That's why they call secrets. But some people are given secrets if they are worthy of them, and some people ask for secrets, they're not worthy of them, and they become harmed. And there's an example of this. I'll give you, this is a real example. And there are brothers here who were there at the time in Morocco, and there was a person, there's a character in those people who go to Morocco, there is a character, and he is called, what's he called, Maulana? He always says Ahadun Ahad. Yeah, Ahadun Ahad. What's his real name? Saud. Correct. Now, this was the first meeting when we met Saud. We were invited for food. So this is a real story, I'll tell you just quickly. So we were invited for food, and Mullah Mustafa was there, I was there, some other brothers were there, Qadri Sahib was there from Salford, and obviously we don't speak Arabic, well, most of us don't. And there's this character, and he was chanting this Ahadun Ahad. Ahadun Ahad. And he kept saying it. So Qadri Sahib sat with him, and so this is a real story, okay, so I'm not making this up. And he asked him some things, and this man asked Qadri Sahib, what's your name? He said, my name is Sardar Qadri Dabbagh. So he said to him, are you Ahmad Dabbagh? And he said, no, I'm Sardar Ahmad Qadri Dabbagh. He goes, okay. He goes, do you know Ahmad Dabbagh? And this Majzoob, as he is, he says, I know Ahmad Dabbagh. He goes, I know him from the spiritual world. And in conversation, Qadri Sahib asked him, how did you become Majzoob? Majzoob means he's crazy, but not crazy in the dunya sense, crazy in Allah's sense. Yeah, so you're lost in Allah's love, not in love of dunya. So he said, so he related his story, and this guy was very, very educated. He was a lecturer in one of the universities in Fez. He was a very, very educated guy. And he said, one day he goes, I was reading the Ali Breeze. And I know this is not about miracles, and I hope the brother doesn't get offended when I just mention this one, because it's about secrets, so I'm just going to mention. And he said, I was reading the Ali Breeze, And he goes, I read it and I read it again, and I fell in love with this character, Sayyidina Abdul Aziz Dabbagh alayhi rahmah. He goes, I fell in love with him, but I didn't know where he was. So he goes, I shouted, Ya Abdul Aziz, where are you? Because I shouted it, where are you? And he said, when I went out from my house, because in the old city of Medina, they're very short streets, they're very narrow alleyways. And he goes, I went out from the house, and there was a man who was stood in the alleyway, and he said, come with me. So he said, I went with him. And he took me through the city, the old city, and he took me through the district, Andalusia district, and then he took me to Bab Futuh, the Bab, the door to the graveyard. And then he took me to the graveyard, and we were going into the graveyard, and I followed him. And then he said, we stopped at this one grave, and he said, here is the person, here is buried the person you're looking for. He said, who is it? He goes, he is Abdul Aziz Dabbagh. So he said, who are you? He goes, I am also Shaykh Abdul Aziz Dabbagh rahimahullah. So he was showing him, and then he goes, he had so many, like you guys are learning, alhamdulillah, you are learning about spirituality and spiritual experiences. And he said that he had so many spiritual experiences, and he met so many prophets and so many angels. And one day he said, I asked for a secret. He goes, I asked for a secret and I was told you cannot contain it. But I kept asking. And I was given a secret and I was told, do not say anything to anybody. He goes, but I made a mistake and I told somebody. He goes, the minute I told somebody, I became majzoob. He goes, I wasn't like this. He goes, I was normal just like you. But when I dishonored the trust, I became majzoob. So now I am here to find Shaykh Ahmad Dabbagh, because he's going to take me out of this condition. Okay, and this is a real life story, and he was telling this in his house. So secrets are, many mashayikh have secrets, and some mashayikh do pass on to some of their students if they are worthy or deserving of them. But the moral of the story, don't ask for things if you cannot contain them, because the danger that could follow could actually cause a very big shift in your life, and you might suffer as a result. So basically, follow the instructions of your teachers. Do everything at the right time, inshallah. So he said that he took the secrets of Sayyidina Umar al-Hawari, and also he received many more secrets that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave him. And he said Allah is very merciful. And then he passed away. Sayyidina Umar al-Hawari passed away, and he said after 3 days, he said, I received an illumination. Okay, so this is a minor illumination, an opening. Similar to what you guys are having. You are having very very tiny actually openings compared to what you could actually achieve if you actually put your effort in. So if you look at the story of Sayyidina Abdul Aziz Dabbagh, he traveled for 12 years, he was given a zikr, he made a promise, he kept his promise, he did his zikr daily, he followed the teachings, instructions, and then you guys are in a very similar situation. Okay, you have a teacher, you have a guide, he is giving you instructions, you are learning, but the difference is we complain too much. We say, I'm busy, I don't have time, this is too difficult, this takes too long. So when we become we say ungrateful, then you only receive very, very little. Okay, when you start showing gratitude, then the mashayikh will open you up and you will receive actually then what you deserve. Okay, so this is a story again which is very relevant to our own spiritual experiences. So the next part of the story, or the two parts, so that's the first part about he received the secrets, and now the part goes on to the illumination. And he mentions that after 3 days, he goes, he experienced an illumination, And he talks about the story. So he said, I bought some fish, and I went home and asked my wife to cook the fish. And she said, go and get oil. Okay, go and get oil from the shrine of Sidi Ali bin Hirzihim, Sidi Harazim. And he said, I went to buy oil so we can fry the fish. And he said, as he was going, he went to the Bab Fatu, as he was going towards the graveyard, he felt, and these are his words, okay, so these are mentioned, documented, these are his words, his experience. He said he felt something, a shudder in his body, and then he felt a numbness and prickliness. But he carried on, because he carried on, even though he was feeling this. He walked for a short while, as getting closer to the shrine, and then he said this feeling intensified, because my heart started beating to such an extent that his collarbone, he said, my collarbone was beating and touching my beard. Such intense heart beating and such intense experience. He said, when he thought to himself, he said, this must be death. Death must be coming. I must be experiencing death. This is what he thought as he was going through this. And then he said that I started to go tall. My body started to become tall and tall and tall until I became taller than any other person. He goes, but it didn't stop. He goes, I kept going higher and higher. He goes, I started seeing the city, I started seeing towns, I started seeing villages, I started seeing people, I saw animals, I saw creatures. He goes, I kept going higher and higher and higher until I could see I was in the sky, and then I was above the sky. Because then I was looking through the sky towards the earth. Because I went so high, and then at that time I saw light. He goes, so much light I saw, to the front of me, behind me, to my left, to my right, above me and below me, because I just saw light, and I got enshrouded in light, and I felt cold, because my body became cold to such an extent that I thought I'd died. Okay, so he's talking about his spiritual experience. He said then, he goes, I tried to lie down to avoid this light, and he goes, all of a sudden I realized my whole body became like eyes. I could see with my head, my arms, my legs, my hands, everything just became eyes. Even I had clothes, the eyes would see through the clothes, and I could just see everything. And he goes, this state continued for a while, and then the state ceased. He said, I didn't manage to get the oil, I went home. Because he was very, very concerned about what had just happened. It was the first experience. Okay, so this was the experience. So he went home, and he said, as even at home I would go through these states, that sometimes I would feel I am not here, and then I'm here. Sometimes I'd feel I'm partly here and partly not here, and this would keep going on for a little while until it ceased again. He goes, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sent some guide for me in the form of an awliya Allah. And he mentioned that he was very grateful to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for sending this guide to him. And he mentions how he met him. So look, everybody needs guidance, especially us. When we relate our experiences, we need somebody to help us, we need someone to guide us, to make sure that we don't go off the track. I mean, I know people personally who would have experiences. Personally, I know them, and they would have experiences, and they would boast in a way, oh, I'm having good experience, I'm seeing this and I'm seeing this. And if you say to them, well, do you have a teacher? No, I don't need a teacher, because I myself can translate this, and I myself can do that. And you know, after about 5 or 6 months of these people, they become a bit, loopy, and they end up in a very difficult state. And some of them, they're still in this state. And I remember years ago where they would, they became very religious, but without any guidance. they became guides themselves without experience, and then they suffered because shaitan just led them down a very dirty road. So he mentions, and I'm nearly finished now, inshallah, just only a little bit left of the story. So he says, I was going to one of the gates of the city, and he goes, I saw a man at the gates, a black man, and he was looking at me. And I looked at him and I thought, why is he looking at me so, in such, detail? And he said, as I walked closer, he came to me and he shook my hand. He greeted me, I greeted him back. And he said, why don't me and you go and talk in the masjid? So there was a masjid nearby, Masjid Jisa, I think it's called. And I said, okay, we'll go to the masjid and we'll talk. When we sat in the masjid, he said, he mentioned things about me. He said, you are not well, you are ill. And he mentioned all the experience that I had. He mentioned it to me without me mentioning to him. He goes, I knew that he was a friend of Allah and Allah had sent him for me. He said, I am here to guide you, to strengthen you, to show you. Because at this stage, I fear for you. Because when a person has an illumination, he is open to many external forces that could come in and misguide or cause confusion to that person. So he said, I came here to help you and guide you. His name was Abdullah al-Barnawi. Barnawa is a place in not Borneo, but it's in Africa. It's in Nigeria. Okay, so it's a place in Nigeria called Barnawa, and he was called Abdullah al-Barnawi. He said, I have come from Africa, from Nigeria to help you. And he goes, and he stayed with me for a while, and he guided me, and he said until another 3 or 4 months went by. He goes, this was in Rajab. He said in Dhul Hijjah, on the 10th of Dhul Hijjah, he goes, the 3rd day of Eid, he said he had then the Fath Kabir, okay, the big opening. And this is where he said he met the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam in a wakeful state. He met the Prophet sallallahu in a wakeful state. And he said that when this happened, he said, Shaykh Abdullah Barnawi, he said, now I have achieved what I wanted to achieve. You have reached the Prophet ﷺ. My job is complete, and I will go back now to my country. Now, the story ends there for us today on this subject. But if you try to think, the original zikr that he was given by Sayyidina Khidr, who remembers? Does anybody remember it? What was the main point in there, in that zikr? Connect with the Prophet ﷺ in this life before death. And in the end, he has met the Prophet ﷺ in a wakeful state, in a physical state before death. Do you understand? So the zikr that he was given at the beginning fulfilled its purpose at the end. Okay, and this is only really the beginning. Then after this, the story continues, and the openings increase, and the knowledge increases, and and he was an ummi. Obviously, he didn't have university or school education. He was given direct knowledge by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So his status increased and increased and increased to such an extent that the brothers will mention to you in other presentations. And this is really the end. I mean, there is a little bit more which I could mention to you. Some of the tests that Shaykh Abdullah Barnawi put upon him to see whether he was sincere or whether he would, he really wanted this gift or not. But I did say I'd keep it short, and it's only been 45 minutes or so. So inshallah, if we can stop there. Subhanakallahumma wa bihamdik, nashhadu an la ilaha illa anta, astaghfiruka wa atubu ilayk. So I hope it's been quite informal and informative for you, and you've learnt something about Sayyidina Abdul Aziz Dabagh alayhi rahmah. MashaAllah.
Jazakallah khair, Ustad. There is time for questions, if anyone wants to ask questions, inshallah. Otherwise, now is the time to rest, and we need to be back in the hall ready to start at 12:15 for the session before Dhuhr, inshallah. So please take time to rest and recuperate, inshallah.